6 months with the FX30, and half the features I thought I'd use, I barely touched. This isn't a review, the FX30 is old enough, specs and breakdowns are pretty much everywhere. This is about what actually mattered, what didn't, and what flat out saved my recordings at times. From overheating scares to autofocus I trust more than myself, preview LUTs that changed how I set up my recording space, and features that sounded great on paper, but never really mattered. This is the FX30 in 2025, after real-world use by someone who isn't an aspiring filmmaker. The autofocus on this thing is sticky. I throw fast head turns, move side to side, block my face, and it snaps back instantly. It doesn't pulse, it doesn't hunt, it just holds on. And that's what makes it different from every other camera I've used before this. Not to say that this is the best one to do it, just the one that I had the best experience with so far. For me, filming alone, this is the single feature that changes everything. I don't need to babysit the focus, I don't need to stop mid-take and check if my eyes are actually sharp. I can trust the camera to keep me locked in. That's huge because autofocus is one of those things you only notice when it fails. And the fact that I don't think about it anymore, that's the biggest compliment I can give, honestly. In 6 months, it never cost me a take. 10-bit S-Log3 is powerful. But on the screen it looks terrible, flat, washed out, uninspiring. And in the past, that made it hard to light or frame confidently, because what I was looking at didn't really reflect what I would look at after applying a LUT to start color grading. Being able to load an S709 preview LUT changes the preview into something that resembles the image I'd see in Final Cut when I start my color grading process. I see contrast, I see color separation, I can judge exposure much more confidently. The file stays log, which is exactly what I want for my workflow, but my monitor view looks usable. I've been using this constantly every single shoot and I can't overstate how much it changes the experience. It takes away the second guessing when you're staring at a flat log image, wondering if it's actually right, if the lighting is actually correct. It gives you that reassurance in the moment, and combining this with zebras, it makes it so much easier to go through the whole lighting setup process when you start setting up your room for a recording. My wife's ZV-E10, as awesome as that camera is, was a nightmare for reliability. Even at the higher temperature tolerance setting, at 4K 30 it would overheat and shut down on me on numerous occasions, which is devastating. Not to mention that I prefer 4K 60 anyway, even if I ultimately upload in 4K 30. The FX30, 6 months in, it hasn't shut down once, not a single time. The only time I even heard the fan was during a brutal heatwave in August, and even then, it wasn't a problem. Like, I couldn't hear it from where I was sitting during the recording, it never touched my audio, and it kept recording without complaint. I only heard it spinning after I was done shooting when I got up to turn off the camera. That's the kind of reliability that matters more than specs to me, because overheating isn't just an inconvenience, it's an actual trust issue. If a camera dies mid-take, it doesn't matter how good the image looks when it's on. With the FX30, I don't worry about that anymore. And that peace of mind changes how you work, in a good way. I sit down to film and I know it's going to make it to the end. That reliability is invisible when it works, but once you've lived with a camera that fails, you never take it for granted again, trust me. This fan might be the most boring feature on the spec sheet, but in practice, it's the reason I can depend on this camera, and honestly, why I wanted it in the first place. That was literally one of the USPs why I chose this camera. The FX30 gives me sharp, detailed image at both 30 and 60 frames per second. For me, 60 FPS isn't a luxury, however, it's the way I prefer to record. A lot of my content is tied to gaming, and if I'm capturing gameplay in 60, I want my camera feed to match. On my previous setup, long 4K recordings were always a battle against overheating, both on the ZV-E10 and on my iPhone 14 Pro Max. With the FX30, I can record 4K 60 for extended sessions without worrying once. I know I keep repeating this over and over, but this is a peace of mind that you really cannot take for granted once you actually acquire it. The image is constantly clean, and the fact that I don't even think about it anymore is what really makes the difference. I almost never shoot at 2500 because I control my lighting, but when I can't, when I'm in a situation where I don't have full control, it is a lifesaver. Having that second clean base ISO gives me breathing room without drowning in noise. This is the main reason why I was never interested in the FX3. I shoot in my office space only, right? Where again, I have total control over the lighting situation. As insane and mind-blowing as the 12,800 second base ISO is on that camera, I literally wouldn't have any use for that. And I'd probably be shooting with a 24mm lens, which means it's kind of the same as my 60mm aps-c one. Long story short, having the camera set to ISO 800 is all I really need. This one I actually tweak when needed. My decorative lamps, which I mostly forget to even set up, like today, can cause a very nasty flicker. With variable shutter, I can just dial it in until it disappears. It saves the shot every time, provided I see that it's happening before I start recording. It's simple, practical, and I'd honestly miss it if it wasn't there. In theory, clear image zoom is great. Turn a 60mm into a 24mm instantly. In practice, I almost never use it. I'm not the biggest fan of digital zooms. Sure, the quality loss is so minuscule, you might not even notice thanks to the oversampling from 6K. But if you know it's there, it's annoying to keep thinking about. Plus, I really want this lens, so it's one of those things that's nice in a pinch, but not something I would want to actively rely on. The body is covered in mounting points, but honestly, I never had a reason to use them. Don't get me wrong, I do want to start on my camera Lego too, but I can't really justify the cost for something that, in my case at least, is just purely for aesthetics, like straight up style over substance. I just don't shoot in a way where rigging out the thing would actually make any sense. My cameras are always mounted on tripods, so I really won't have any use for this in the near future at least. I don't really use the FX30 as a streaming camera myself. I tested it once for a short, but that's about it. The full-sized HDMI port does make it easier to hook into a capture card if you want to go that route. Funny enough, my wife actually used the USB streaming option during a business meeting with a teleprompter setup. That way she could see both her notes and the person she was talking to on the same screen, while keeping eye contact the entire time. It looked professional and worked flawlessly. USB streaming itself isn't unique, the ZV-E10 can do it too. On the FX30 it does go up to 1080p though, but for video calls it hardly matters since platforms like Teams or Google Meet crush the quality with compression anyway. ZV-E10 FX30, it probably all looks the same in the end. So for what it's worth, the full-sized HDMI slot, if you want to use it as a dedicated streaming camera for instance, would be the more interesting feature here. In my research for this video, I found that some people were complaining about aps-c lens availability. I'm not sure if that's a thing of the past or not, but it's been a non-issue on my end at least. Everything I wanted I could find new and at MSRP without problems. Which, at least on the MSRP side of things, is something I cannot say about my 1590 Founders Edition purchase in that same time frame. As for the FX30 screen, it's sharp and one of the best I've used. However, when I'm recording myself, by myself, it's blocked by the teleprompter. So I've been relying on the Monitor and Control app to see my feed. I really like the app for monitoring purposes, which is something I was in fact longing for when I was still using the ZV-E10. Sometimes, however, the app just absolutely struggles to keep a connection with the camera, and I'm not quite sure what it is. Like, it's not a distance issue, because I've tested that, but yeah, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But at least I have a record button right on me, so that's nice. And on the subject of the ZV-E10 one more time, this is the one thing I will keep repeating. Reliability. Coming from the ZV-E10, which overheated constantly, the FX30 feels bulletproof. Granted, the feel of its build further cements that impression in my mind. But yeah, 6 months in, no overheating, no crashes, no lost recordings, it just does the job. So after 6 months, what are the things that actually matter to me then? Autofocus that just works, preview LUTs that make setting up easier, a fan that keeps me recording even when the room temperature itself reaches unbearable levels, and 4K 60 that hasn't failed me yet. The features I thought I'd lean on, like the dual base ISO for instance, they barely see any use. And maybe that's the point. It isn't about the FX30's laundry list of features. Most of the features don't really matter to me, right? What matters to me is that the FX30 nails the ones I actually rely on. Leave a like, subscribe, and a comment. Feel free to just post some camera-related emojis in the comment section if you have nothing specific to comment. That way, I'll know that you've watched the video all the way to the end. I still don't really see how that's supposed to motivate you, but you know what? I'll just keep it here. It's fine. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.